All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating chapter from the writings of a 13th century mystic, Saint Gertrude the Great. It's this deeply personal story about facing your fears, finding comfort in unexpected ways, and a kind of surprising take on the spiritual economics of gratitude. So, what we're looking at here is a text that was actually put together by the nuns from her own monastery. They were capturing her incredibly intimate spiritual experiences. This isn't some dry theological textbook. Think of it more like a journal of these profound divine conversations. It gives us this really rare window into the spiritual life of someone from the Middle Ages. So let me start by asking you a question. Imagine you were told with 100% certainty that a really, really difficult trial was just around the corner. Not if, but when. How would you react? Because this is exactly where Gertrude's story begins. And that brings us right into the first part of her journey, a divine premonition and the very, very human fear that came along with it. The story kicks off when Gertrude gets a message directly from God that she's about to face a pretty significant hardship. Now, the text tells us this wasn't some kind of punishment. The whole point was actually for the increase of her merit, like a spiritual workout to make her stronger. But let's be honest, knowing the reason why something is happening doesn't always make it any less scary. And her reaction? It wasn't stoic or super saintly at all. I mean, yeah, she was a saint, but the text is super clear that she was also human. It says she began to fear through human weakness. It's just an incredibly relatable moment, right? Even when you have a direct line to God, the thought of suffering is still terrifying. So how does God respond to her fear? Well, not by taking the problem away. Instead, he provides this incredibly powerful source of support. And that brings us to the next part of her story, a divine comfort. Okay, so here's the crucial point. God doesn't cancel the trial. Instead, he offers her a lifeline. He gives Gertrude his own mother to act as a dispenser of relief. Basically, the deal was, whenever the burden just felt like it was too much to handle, Gertrude could turn to her for help. It's a tool for endurance, not an escape hatch. Now, you'd think that would be the end of the story, right? Problem solved. But this amazing act of compassion, it actually creates a brand new and, in some ways, much more complicated problem for Gertrude, this overwhelming burden of gratitude. So a little while later, another devout person in her community basically insists that Gertrude has a duty to share these private spiritual experiences, what the text calls her singular favors. And this just put her in a really tough spot. She felt these moments were deeply personal, but now she was being told she had to make them public. This just sparks a major internal crisis for her. She was already struggling with how to even begin to thank God for his incredible kindness, for giving her such a powerful comforter. And now, being asked to publicize these gifts, it just made her anxiety skyrocket. How could anything she did ever be enough to repay what felt like an infinite debt of gratitude? So she's desperate for an answer, and she begs God to show her what to do. And the answer she gets isn't a simple yes or no. It's this fascinating, kind of cryptic financial metaphor. This is the reply she gets, and it's a direct echo of a parable from the Gospel of Luke. Give my money to the bank, that when I come, I may receive it with usury. Now just imagine being a 13th century nun and hearing that. What money? What bank? And what on earth is this usury or interest that God is talking about? Okay, so let's break this down. The first piece of the puzzle is the money. In this spiritual economy, the money isn't gold or silver coins. It's the divine wisdom, those singular favors, the revelations that God had given her. It's the very thing she was so hesitant to share. And this illustrates the whole strategy so brilliantly. Step 1, she receives the gift from God. Step 2 is to give it to the bank. In other words, to invest it by sharing it freely with other people. And step 3, that's the usury, the return on the investment. The return God wants is the positive spiritual impact, the faith, the hope, the love that sharing her experience creates in others. Her gratitude isn't meant to be some static treasure she holds onto. It's capital that's meant to be invested. This revelation completely reframes Gertrude's whole understanding of her purpose. It's not about hiding her gifts away. It's about putting them to work out in the world. And to really seal this lesson, the text wraps up with this quote from the book of Proverbs. It's this final piece of wisdom that just clarifies the different roles that God and humanity play in this whole drama of Revelation. So on one hand, you have God's glory, which is in the mystery of concealing the word. But humanity's glory, which is represented here by kings, is in the active pursuit of that truth, in searching out the speech. Suddenly, Gertrude realizes her job isn't to hoard the mystery, but to explore it, to articulate it, and to share it. That is how she can truly repay her debt. And so this 800-year-old story leaves us with a really provocative question. It suggests that our gifts, our talents, our insights, they aren't just for us. They're a form of spiritual capital meant to be invested, which kind of makes you wonder, what divine money, what unique wisdom or gift have you been given that's meant to be shared?